that he would like to make.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And I'm going to depart from my prepared remarks for just a second because I want to begin with 4 thank yous. And the first one's to you. Your focus on this issue has been unrelenting and I think appropriate. And while we may disagree over this or that interpretation, the fact is you've kept this committee focused where it needed to be on the welfare of these people, and you deserve all of our thanks. It is the right way to do oversight, and you've done it. I want to thank the IG. You know, we have IGs because you know, my mom used to have a wonderful saying, you're friends with the people that tell you what you need to know, not what you want to hear. And I think, Ms. Maxwell, you told us what we needed to know, and not necessarily what we wanted to hear, but I think that's your job, and you did it very well in this case, and I appreciate it. I also want to thank Director Hayes. I had the opportunity to travel to the border region with him over the August break, and I see a lot of effort to implement some of the changes and to be responsive to criticism and to correct the situation that we all agree. And finally, to a much maligned Congress, I want to give a thanks to the Congress. It took us a little too long, but we finally gave the administration the resources it needed in the emergency supplemental. And that hadn't solved every problem, but I can tell you things are a lot better than they were 90 or 120 days ago because Congress acted. Now, again, it took us 6 weeks. We did the same thing for President Obama in 3, but in the end, it was a bipartisan action by Congress that provided the resources that began to let us address some of the problems that Ms. Maxwell has very appropriately and I think wisely pointed out. We still have a long way to go, but this was a promising start. So with that, Madam Chair, I want to welcome our witnesses for the subcommittee's 3rd hearing on unaccompanied alien children program. Today, we're here to focus on the mental health needs of children in the care of the Department of Health and Human Services. Before we begin, I want to focus a little on the history of this program over the past few years. In 2012, this program received an appropriation of $169 million. This past year, the fiscal year 2019 appropriation, this committee provided more than $1.3 billion. In just 7 years, the appropriation for this program has grown by more than 670%. So there certainly has been a focus on it here. In 2012, the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement had over 13,000 children referred to them by the Department of Homeland Security. In the current year, HHS has had over 60,000 children referred to them for care. By the end of the fiscal year, HHS will likely have cared for over 70,000 children, more children than in any prior year. Again, in just 7 years, an increase of 370%. Pretty staggering. Both a Democratic and a Republican president have requested supplemental appropriations in the billions to support unanticipated arrivals of teenagers at our southern border. HHS now routinely cares for tens of thousands of children who travel thousands of miles, most coming from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Objectively, this is a crisis and one that needs a comprehensive bipartisan solution. Federal law requires the Department of Homeland Security to transfer to HHS any unauthorized minor not accompanied by a parent or a legal guardian. This legal requirement means that when Customs and Border Protection or Immigration and Customs Enforcement apprehend a minor with an uncle, an aunt, a grandmother, grandfather, or older brother or sister, the law defines that minor as unaccompanied and requires transfer of that child to HHS. I understand there are many who believe these children should remain with the adult relative they are traveling with. However, that's not the law of the United States, and that's probably something we should look at. I also want to address the topic of a zero-tolerance policy implemented by the Department of Justice in 2018. The administration has made several attempts to stem the flow of migration happening to our southern border. The zero-tolerance policy was clearly a mistake. And I'm glad that the President quickly ended it and the implementation of it. But the consequences continue. And while we may all disagree on the merits of such a policy, we can all agree HHS does not play a role in the establishment of immigration policy. HHS does not separate family. HHS does not separate children from their parents. HHS's responsibility is to care for children referred to them by DHS and to find suitable sponsors. And in that area, we've made considerable progress. As I said, many of these children are coming to our borders through Mexico from Central America. It's no surprise that such an arduous, dangerous journey is traumatic. Many of the children left family members, poverty, and dangerous conditions to come here. Once apprehended by DHS, the children are turned over to HHS to begin the process of finding a sponsor. For the short time the children are in HHS's care, they are provided with vaccinations, mental health screening, education, and legal information. Referral to mental health services can be a part of that process. The Office of Inspector General highlighted the challenges with meeting the mental health needs of the children in care. I want to point out that a significant portion of America, frankly, also faces the challenge of accessing mental health services. According to the Health Resources and Services Administration, 34% of the American population lives in a mental health professional shortage area. My own district alone has 22 such designated areas. So challenges facing adequate access to mental health services is something many areas are having to deal with. I'll just add parenthetically, when I was fortunate enough to be chairman of this committee and we had passed 21st Century Cures, there was a lot of mental health provisions in that. And the member most responsible, former member, Congressman Murphy, came to visit me, and I said, look, you've got multiple things here. I can't fund them all. You know, they're going to give me a finite amount of money. I'm not an authorizer. I got to live within a budget. Pick one or two things. And he hesitated for a minute. He said, number one thing is we just need more mental health care professionals. Anything you can do. Otherwise, we're just competing back and forth for a very small pool of professionals. And so we need to invest more in creating literally the healthcare professional service corps that we need. I also appreciate the desire for HHS role in the care of these children to be expanded. However, given the unprecedented surge in the number of unaccompanied children crossing our southern border, HHS's primary focus should be the establishment of state licensed and small facilities to care for children until placement with a sponsor is possible. And again, I want to commend you, Mr. Hayes. You've done a lot more of that in the last 60 to 90 days, and that's been very helpful. I know that my friends at HHS are doing their best that they can with a challenging situation. I want to commend them for the difficult work they are performing and note that they are facing, again, many of the same challenges faced by the prior administration. It's my hope that this committee will work with them in a bipartisan fashion to provide the resources needed to confront this urgent challenge. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back my time.